Well, hello, hello, hello. If you've found me here, you've landed on Let's Talk News. I'm your host, Leticia Remauro. It is good to have you here tonight as we discuss testing one, two, three. Because we want to talk about how the socialists are testing all of us, all Americans, to see how much we'll take, whether or not they can undermine our constitutional republic and turn our capitalist society into a socialist society like Cuba and Venezuela. They are going to tell us it's going to look more like Sweden, but at the end of the day, it will not. It will look like Cuba and Venezuela. Why do I say that? Well, because Sweden is a very lovely country. I'm not dissing Sweden at all, but it's not America. And the people who are trying to undermine America right now are people who hate America. And this whole movement is coming from China and Russia, our two biggest enemies. And they are pumping lots and lots of money into propaganda so that our young people buy into this glorification of socialism and the hatred for the country that birthed them. And this has been going on for a very long time. You know it. We've talked about it on this channel for the last 4 years now, 5 years, almost 6 years. 6 years, and we've had to start over how many times? Ugh, like 6 years, and we're very close to 1,000 subs, but we haven't gotten there yet. Come on, we've got to get there. But yeah, it's been 6 years that we've been talking about the undermining of America because it kind of started becoming apparent during COVID, but it's been going on since World War II. And, McCarthy, Congressman McCarthy, Joe McCarthy, people thought he was crazy when he was holding all these hearings about people, about communists and the Red Scare. And, maybe indeed he was. I mean, it's a scary thing when a certain group of people are prosecuted or persecuted, or when people are spied on in a free country. And that's what happened under McCarthy. But he wasn't wrong, because our enemies have been trying to undermine us for a very, very long time. And there has been so many television shows, videos that you can find now of Russian spies who have defected, who've told about what they're planning to do in America, and of Chinese spies as well. But anyway, let me say hello to our audience before we continue on. Hello, Francine. Good to have you. Hi, Kevin. A delay. I hope all is well. Hi, Andrew Dorman. Hi, Karen. Good to have you. Our OG, Lucille Chavone. And our sister, Colleen. How are you? Oh, I wanted to let you know that Robert Santillan in Hawaii came through the hurricanes okay. He and I have been speaking offline. It hit his island. But fortunately for him, his cats are safe, his family's safe, and his property is safe. But there are other areas of the island that have been hit pretty bad, and he's out today going to help them out. Thankfully, he's out there helping out because, as he said it, the news media is not on top of where all the damage is. Karen says demonstrations in Dearborn, Michigan, claims that the Democrats brought Muslims into the country to take it over. Wow. Well, they did. And it's not just into our country, right? We know it's in England and Italy and France. And if you want to see the wrong side or social or the undermining actually at work, look at what's going on in France right now. In France right now, you can't use gas-powered equipment to like mow your lawn or trim your lawn or any of that. They have no air conditioning. They have some real problems going on in France right now. And it's not just France. The UK is broke. We have a lot. They have a lot of problems, and this was all targeted, right? Get rid of the West, and that's where that whole Muslim network is coming from. And I know I mentioned Russia and China, but they're utilizing the Muslim zealots to accomplish their goals, like Iran, right? Okay, Kevin says, my YouTube put you back 4 minutes from start time. I refreshed and you were on. Oh, that's interesting. I actually was probably just under a minute late. I was reading a message and I didn't realize what time it is. They are right. They're absolutely. Hi, Anne-Marie. How are you? Thank you for joining us tonight. It was good to see you today. And Angela Ricca, how are you, darling? So anyway, so let's talk about this testing 1, 2, 3, because I'm sure you know that Mamdani put this pied de terre tax into play, where he wants anyone who owns a property, if it's a condo, $1 million or more, and if it's a house, $5 million or more, to pay an extra tax, an extra property tax, if this is your second home. Well, the interesting thing is that a lot of properties in New York City are $1 million. I mean, a lot. And in Brooklyn and Queens, and even in the Bronx, a brownstone, $5 million for a brownstone or a multifamily dwelling is not a lot of money. That's about the going rate. So what he did was he published the names and the information of people who would, and the properties that would be subject to this tax. And it turns out that many of the people published their properties were worth that money, but they were residents of that property. It wasn't their second home. It was their primary residence, and they paid their taxes. But the way that Mamdani sent out letters was, hey there, your home is worth over $5 million or $1 million, and you are going to be subject to this additional property tax unless you could prove to us that you live in that property full time. So it was guilty until proven innocent. And so they sued, and the judge put the pied de terre tax on hold. But Mamdani appealed, and of course, one of his cronies, Democrat cronies, they overturned it. So today they had hearings on it. Colleen says some tiny apartments are $1 million. Yes, absolutely. In Battery Park City, where I worked, every single apartment is over $1 million. Every single, and I have friends who have penthouses, worth $50 million. They have to prove that they live there full time. So it's interesting, very interesting. So, the thing is that the New York City taxes, property taxes, are generally lower than, let's say, Long Island or Nassau or Westchester or Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, and where else? Rockland. They're generally lower property taxes than they are up north, except for on Staten Island, where they are exorbitant. And why are they exorbitant? Because here's the thing there was a law And remember, property tax is set usually by the state. But for New York City, there was an agreement some years ago. And what the agreement was that the city would set and collect the taxes. And so the city adopted, but they would have to pay it to the state. So the city collected the taxes in such a way that they said that if you had a building that had no major improvements on it, then your taxes could only go up 5% within 5 years. Okay, a total of 5% within 5 years. So that meant that if you had a brownstone, and when they said no major improvements, it's not interior, it's exterior. So like you couldn't build it out and up and all that stuff. So brownstones, 100 and 200-year-old, well, not 200, 100 and older brownstones, and apartment buildings that abutted other buildings, their taxes couldn't go up more than 5% over 5 years because they couldn't expand on their lot because their lot was fixed. They was stuck in the middle of a building. So where did the taxes go up? In the single family homes. Where were the single family homes? Well, Staten Island is almost entirely 1 and 2 family homes on a lot. And some of those lots were big lots. Like my lot was 1/4 acre. Queens, a lot of 1 and 2 family homes on bigger lots, which were expanded and renovated over time. And so the walls expanded. And so the coverage of the lot expanded. And so when that happened, your tax reset at the rate of that date. So, for instance, I had a house that was 100 years old, but I redid my house in the 2000s. So I did not expand my footprint of my house. Because if I expanded my footprint of my house, then it would have reset from 1948 to the 2000. And then it would be, you can't go up more than 5% in 5 years. So, but even though I didn't expand my footprint, their second way of getting you is assessed value. Because I added such value to my house, my taxes went up dramatically, but not as bad as if I had expanded my footprint. So I know that was a long explanation, but just so that you understood, is that the people who had the most expensive buildings in New York City were paying lower taxes than those of us who had a 1-family home that I paid $150,000 for my house, when those buildings in Manhattan and Brooklyn, the brownstones, were already over $3 million. But I was paying more taxes than the more expensive buildings. Get it? Okay. So what Mamdani did was he sent out a letter to everybody, basically, whose home or condo was $1 million or more, and whose house was worth $5 million or more. And he said, prove to me that you live there full time. And that's kind of like, going before the king, because who's gonna keep him honest? You know what I mean? And how much is it going to cost you? And do you have to pay? They were saying that the payments had to start in August in the quarter for the September quarter. So it's crazy stuff. All right. Let me just catch up on Colleen. My dad wanted to buy me an apartment in Battery Park City when it first started, but stupid me said no. Oh, yeah, those. Well, my girlfriend's now got a $50 million condo. What to do about it? Is it still going to be worth $50 million? Who knows? All right. Anyway, Here, listen to what went on today.
The hearing is being held by the Committee on Finance, the Committee on Governmental Operations, State and Federal Legislation. And we can expect council members to grill city officials over the handling of the implementation of the tax that was approved earlier this year, which places a surcharge on second, 2 and 3 family homes worth more than $5 million and co-ops and condos worth more than $1 million. There's been a lot of confusion over the rollout, and even a lawsuit filed by homeowners who claim the city put the burden on them to prove they live in their home full time instead of the burden being on the city. They also are taking issue with the city's publishing of a list of properties, nearly 1 million properties, including addresses and owners' names, which read, quote, may be subject to the tax. Days later, the city clarified that only 17,000 homeowners who have received letters are subject to the new tax. The lawsuit led to a pause in the pied-à-terre rollout, but the city appealed, and the judge ruled that the city can move forward with litigation as it continues. Now, Mayor Mamdani's administration has extended the deadline to file an application to fight or contest the surcharge, and that is now until September 18th. The question many have, including homeowners who will be at the hearing today testifying, is why was there over 900,000 New Yorkers on that list? So last week on Good Day, attorney Randy Mastro, who is representing the homeowners, spoke about what he calls was a botched rollout.
The city in a heartbeat could figure out who is potentially subject to this tax, but they didn't do the homework. Why? Was it negligence? Was it laziness? Was it intentionality to try and ensnare thousands of New Yorkers who don't owe this tax into having to pay it?
Now, we did reach out to the mayor's office asking why no one will be attending today. We're still waiting to hear back. As for the hearing, well, it's set for 1 p.m.
Okay. So Colleen asks, are landlords included in the multiple dwelling? Well, that's a good question. A million New Yorkers, or a million properties, were included. Let me just see something. I just want to Google something. How many properties are in New York City? How many residential properties? Just to give us an idea of how far off he is. 3.7 million. So, total residential housing units across its 5 boroughs. So, this total comprises roughly 1.1 million owner-occupied units and 2.34 million renter-occupied units. That's what it says. So so a third there. So letters went out to a third. Do we really think that a third of people who own property in New York are using it as a second home? Do we really think that a third of the people who have a property in New York are billionaires? Just that Google right there should have shown that there's a problem. Because, when you think of pied-à-terre, it's like the Wall Street people, right, who have the big sprawling house in Westchester, like Bill and Hillary Clinton, but who keep an apartment in the city. I have some friends who keep an apartment in the city, but they live upstate New York, or they live in Florida or Greece or whatever. So that's who they're talking about. The people who are filthy rich. Do we really think that 1.1 million people who live in New York City or own a property in New York City are filthy rich and use that as their second home? No. The nature of buying rental properties is that you don't live there alone. Right, exactly. So, but that, look, some people, and I know lots of people, their family, the Italians, they scraped together money and they had like a 3-family house, and mom and dad lived in the first floor, and then the kids lived on the second and third floor. And it was all a family unit. And then over time, one of the kids moved out, the other one stayed, and inherited the house. And we're not talking rich people. We're talking about everybody pooled their money together to live together. So, the goal, the thing here about this pied-à-terre tax is that you have to prove that you actually live there. And I wonder what he's going to use as proof. Is it going to be your driver's license? Is it going, what's it going to use as proof? Voter registration? That would be interesting. Wouldn't it be interesting if your voter registration became your identification for whether or not this was your pied-à-terre or your residence? Especially, since they don't want vote ID for voters. That was my family on my block. Yeah, that was my grandparents. My grandparents owned both my grandparents owned a brownstone. One in Bay Ridge, the other one in downtown Brooklyn. And the kids lived in the apartments. That's how it was. A tax on one will always lead more cost to others. Yes, exactly. But, this is the socialist way. So what is he trying to do? Let's think about this for a minute. He's trying to drive down the price of property, right? Because, or get rid of the rich people from New York. Because if you have a $5 million house, would you sell it for $499? Would you buy a $5 million house in New York knowing that you were going to have to pay on top of the $100,000 a year you pay, in taxes and fees and all that other stuff for a condo? Are you going to really want to buy in New York when everything now is, you can live in Europe? You don't have to be in New York anymore. You don't have to be on Wall Street anymore. You could trade from your computer. And by the way, Wall Street's moving to Florida. So what's he doing? He doesn't believe that, people still feel like you have to be in New York because, I've said this a million times. In the past, New York was like, the red velvet robes at Studio 54. Only the good looking, and the rich and the famous got in, and they would throw you off the line. But that's gone with COVID. You don't need to be in New York. As a matter of fact, big corporations now prefer not to be in New York. The big ones, they don't want to have to go through the hassle of bringing people into the office because then they have to train them on all kinds of things, harassment and all this shit, the rents, the traffic. That's why so many small businesses, like in the financial district, have gone belly up. That's why New York has never truly recovered. And the reason that rents are so high in New York is because the government stepped in when they took in all those illegal migrants and started paying outrageous money for them to live there. Live in hotels. The best of the best hotels were getting $400 a day per person for a migrant to stay there. So there was no tourists. So tourism went down. Now regular people who had regular jobs were competing with illegal migrants who have the government as their backer for rental places. And we had a rental shortage already in New York before COVID, before this migration, before Biden. We had over 60,000 people sleeping on the street. So it was the government that drove up the rent. So if they're not affordable, thank you, government. They used to, that would happen when I was a community board chair. The city would come in with a city-backed project for housing, and they would subsidize rent. So in a place where people were paying $800 a month rent, the city was giving $1,200 a month to sweeten the pot. And so now all the rents in the area went up to $1,200. And that's what made things less affordable. All right, lots of comments. Guilty until proven innocent. It's the socialist way. Lorraine, absolutely. Many families who have their homes in a trust are getting these letters. Well, there you go. My dad still lives there, my uncle across the street, but it's my mom's generational home since the late 1800s. Well, guess what? Let's see what happens. COVID switched everything up. My friend is a realtor for 30 years and has never seen so many vouchers, $2,500 a month for one bedroom. Well, that's it. And Cyborg just sent out a notice that home sales were down for the first time in years last month. Yeah. Interesting. Everything government subsidizes skyrocket, health, housing, tuition. So that's a great transition. So what is the big deal for the socialists, right? They want health care for everybody, Medicare for all. And we talked about that already. I mean, why do we need health care for everybody? It used to be that just old people needed the health care, which is why we have Medicare. But all of a sudden, with, as we made Americans sick, both mentally and physically, now everybody needs health care. And Obamacare was supposed to be the answer to that, but that it wasn't. Clearly it wasn't. It drove prices up, and people still don't have enough health care, according to the Democrats. So Obamacare was already tried, and it failed miserably. So why are the socialists trying this Medicare for all shit? What do they think is going to happen? I want to show you this clip from the Will Cain show. I thought it was really, really good. You should go back and get it on YouTube. Hopefully it won't globally block my video because I'm using this because YouTube now is really hypersensitive that I'm getting close to 1,000 viewers. But anyway, watch this clip.
Estimated cost for universal health care ranges anywhere from $75 trillion to $39 or $40 trillion. Low end, high end. Where do we get that money? We're always told we're going to get it from the billionaires. Okay, let's take a look. If you raised the top income tax rate on billionaires to 40%, then you would, and by the way, not just billionaires, anyone making over $1 million, you would raise about almost $500 billion. Almost $500 billion. But this is small, right? You're a socialist. You're watching. You're saying to yourself, I'm not stopping at 40%. I'm going to tax them. What do you want to go? You want to go 90%? Let's go 90%. Take everyone making over $1 million a year and tax them at 90%. Really go after the rich. And you're going to raise about $2 trillion. $2 trillion dropped into this bucket.
Of course you can pay for it. We're already paying for it now. In the case of Medicare for All, the entire point is to save people money. You're replacing people's premiums, their copays, deductibles with the tax. And what you're doing ultimately is putting more money in people's pockets.
What's your best example in America of the government stepping into a market and making something cheaper?
Medicare. That's exactly what Medicare does. That's why we want Medicare for All, because Medicare is the most popular healthcare program in the United States. Because people are much more satisfied with Medicare than they are with private insurance.
Hold on, Nathan. Healthcare, and in large part driven by Medicare, healthcare in the United States is one of the few hyperinflationary industries that we have. It, along with education, housing, and pretty much any other industry that the government chooses to subsidize, are the ones that increase prices at hyperinflationary rates. Take a look. I've got the numbers here. You can take a look. It's on your screen. Yeah. Hospital services, 256%. College tuition, almost 200%. Medical care services, 140%. Now, I want you to compare that to the price of a television. Okay, Nathan, have you bought a television in the past 20 years? What would have cost $1,000 now today cost $100. Why is it that the industries like this that the government gets involved in, it does the opposite of what you're promising? Prices don't just go up, they're hyperinflationary.
It's entirely the private insurance industry that is driving these costs. In fact, if you look at it, Medicare is driving costs down. It costs people less. And a Medicare for all system, even conservative think tanks who have looked at this, show that it saves America as a whole. And the average taxpayer is going to save thousands of dollars when we switch to a Medicare for all system. It's also true that on the pied-à-terre tax and the California billionaires tax, the math adds up on these things too in ways that I can explain to you.
Okay, so let's just unpack that for a minute. Nathan said that instead of paying insurance premiums, we're going to pay a tax, which we, by the way, already pay. So I guess he means an additional tax, which is what is exactly going to have to happen because the numbers are the numbers. What I find interesting is that Will King said everything the government gets involved in is hyperinflationary. And he showed it. Hospital, medical, tuition, and housing. And Nathan's eyes were anywhere and brain were anywhere on what Will King was stating. But instead, he had his talking points because he comes back with, no, it's the insurance industry. Well, the insurance industry doesn't make housing go up. The insurance industry, medical insurance industry, didn't make college tuition go up. So they can't answer the question. They have talking points that sound good. But when somebody calls them out on it and starts to use logical facts, no, the numbers. Oh, even conservative think tanks. Well, which ones? Tell us how. If raising the tax at 40% on the billionaires and millionaires will get you less than $1 trillion, not even $500 billion, how are you going to pay $75 trillion? The problem is that Democrats, and especially Democrat socialists, never could do math. They don't understand math. And Colleen rightly says, and I love that she rightly says this, we contribute to Medicare our whole careers. It's not an entitlement, and we still have to pay for things when we have it. Absolutely. I mean, we pay into the system. Now we would have to pay in more than we've been paying because we're looking at $75 trillion. And here's the other thing. Aren't the Democrats the ones always saying that, oh, Medicare is going to be bankrupted? So clearly it's not working the way it was thought to work. And again, Obamacare. Why do we need more than Obamacare? Everybody said Obamacare was it. How come it's not it? How is this different than Obamacare? Why will this be different? Why doesn't anybody ask that shit? I want them to let me debate some of these fucking socialists so I could put them straight. They confuse Medicaid with Medicare. They sure do. Hey, Professor, good to have you. They always reference Sweden. Yes, always. But Sweden's not the United States. And you know, I mean, honestly, if they want Sweden, go to Sweden. Why must the United States become Sweden? It's crazy. Inflation devaluates currency, thus reducing the 75 trillion by half. Okay. So even if it was 37.5 trillion, they taxing the rich by 40% more, the millionaires would only garner them 0.4 for less than $500 billion. So if inflation is going to reduce value of currency, then that would be even less. It would be 20%, right? $250 billion that we would take in. And then would people actually be millionaires? Because if it's going to be by half, then, you'd only be a 500,000-aire. And the other thing is that just because somebody's net worth is $1 trillion, i.e. Elon Musk, he doesn't have $1 trillion at his hand. And there's no bank that can lend him $1 trillion because they don't have it. He's the only one that does. And as far as billionaires are concerned, same thing for them. Usually it's your property that helps you. The things you own, the corporations, the businesses, the stuff that you own that creates your value and your net worth. Well, if we're going to devaluate everything by inflating everything, then what do we got? Then we're in a collapse, because what they were depending on isn't going to happen, because now everybody's worth less. So there are fewer millionaires. So they can't even get that money. And even if they got that money wouldn't be worth what they are claiming it's going to be worth right now. Let's see. We can, in effect, reduce debt by inflation. Yes, of course we could, but that's in effect. We could reduce debt by inflation. You owe less when money is worthless. Of course you do. But then you have less too, don't you? So in essence, socialism is that everybody gets to be poor together. That's what happens with socialism. All right. Yeah, bingo. Right. Exactly. Okay, quickly, and this isn't so quick, but I wanted to talk about what's his face from Virginia. I don't know if you heard the story, so I'm just going to let it run, okay?
Toshpulodzoda killed his landlord in 2019, and then he was found not guilty by reason of insanity in 2022 and committed to the Northern Virginia Mental Health Institute. Fast forward to June of this year, and a judge in the Fairfax County Courthouse said he, quote, shall not be released from custody and inpatient hospitalization without further order from this court. But in Virginia, a mental health institute can allow someone, grant them permission, even an accused murderer, the ability to leave for the day or even over a 48-hour weekend pass without an escort, despite the judge's order. Back in 2024, Toshpulodzoda was given permission with the Commonwealth Attorney's support to travel to Washington, D.C. to the Tajik embassy to get a passport. And on July 6th, he used that passport when he was granted a 48-hour weekend pass from the institute, went to Dulles Airport and hopped on a one-way flight to Tajikistan by way of Istanbul. Now, most of this information is detailed in a recent court filing from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, filed on August 5th, 1 month after he left the country, asking a judge to issue a warrant that could be enforced beyond Virginia's borders. And attached to that motion, a declaration by a Turkish Airlines employee verifying the ticket he used that appears to include a code for an upgrade to a window seat. The ticket was purchased by someone else, but in Toshpulodzoda's name. Now, we asked the Department of Behavioral Health, who oversees the institute, where he was committed. How could this happen? And they said, well, federal and state privacy laws prevent them from talking about individual cases, but while an individual remains committed, Virginia law provides for the department clinical teams to request graduated privileges as part of treatment based on a clinical and public safety assessment that are reviewed and approved by a panel of experts. Now, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office confirmed that the office has continued to oppose Toshpulodzoda's release, including in June of this year, because there was no way to ensure the safety of the community, they say. But outside of those hearings, a spokesperson said the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office doesn't have a role in other decisions. The office also said a bench warrant has been issued, and if he re-enters the U.S., he will be arrested and brought to Virginia. Toshpulodzoda is not the only accused murderer who has been granted at least a day pass out in the community in Fairfax County. In fact, we spoke with a separate family member of a murder victim who said that they are concerned about this entire process.
So isn't it interesting? And I wonder, is the FBI and CIA going to investigate who purchased that ticket for him? Because it sounds to me like this is not just a crazy guy. It sounds to me like this is somebody who was sent here for a purpose. I sure hope that the FBI and the feds are on this, because this is the most insane thing I have ever heard of. And that, I don't know, if I have to be honest, it has been talked about a little bit on other channels, but not much. This should be blasted everywhere. I mean, this guy killed his landlord and was found insane and then let out of the mental institution. What? Just what? I mean, how much are we going to take as Americans? How many deaths have we seen because of this ridiculous open border policy that the Democrat socialists want to continue? Because at the end of the day, what they want to sow is chaos. Because if you have chaos and people feel unsafe, and if people don't have money, they will do anything. And that is, that's what they're trying to do here. So I don't know if you all saw it or you didn't see it, but I wanted to make sure that you saw it here because it's all part of the same game, ladies and gentlemen. So talkers, I have an assignment for you. I have homework for you. Whenever you see or hear somebody on social media talking about Medicare for all, I want you to ask them to explain to you what happened to Obamacare. How come it didn't work? Don't we already have that with Obamacare? Isn't that what Obamacare was? How is Medicare for all different than Obamacare? Drill them down on it. Make them explain it. Because this is the new talking point that, it's the insurance companies. Yeah, it is the insurance companies. And Obamacare made the insurance companies rich. And can the federal government negotiate with the insurance companies? Sure they can. But you know what? Who else can? So can citizens. The states. I mean, George Pataki found a way, and that's why Child Health Plus and then Family Health Plus, that's why that came into play. That is indeed what it was, is bundling of insurance. So that more people would be, like when a big employer offers you insurance, let's say NYPD, for instance, 45,000 cops? I think that, it's like $100 every 2 weeks for insurance for your family, because they can negotiate. So Pataki started that with the bundling, and he put people together in regions so that they can negotiate. And he had a whole office dedicated to it. It's still there, still working. It's less comprehensive since Obamacare was brought out. But for the first time in New York's history, every child was covered by insurance, and it didn't cost the taxpayers extra money either. It's amazing. It's all a negotiation. So when a socialist wants to talk to you about Medicare for all, that's your job, talkers. Ask them how to explain how that will be different than Obamacare, and why are they not happy with their Obamacare insurance? Bleeding Heart, says Colleen. They're insane. Something is wrong. Either they're being paid off or they're hormonal. I don't know, but something ain't right in America. All right, as usual, we are over, but thank you for joining. I love having you all, and thank you, Colleen, for keeping the conversation, and Peter and everybody for keeping the conversation working and moving. I will see you tomorrow at 8:00. We've got a lot to talk about this week. Swalwell, admitted to doing the bang bang with the fang fang. So we're going to talk about that a little bit this week. All right. Love you all. Thank you. And remember, why are you unhappy with Obamacare? Didn't Obamacare solve your problems?